Okay, in this unit, chapter 1.6, we want to look at two different types of solving. We're going to look at solving absolute value equations, and we're going to look at solving radical equations. The first one we want to look at now is going to be solving absolute value equations. Okay, when we solve an absolute value equation, it's going to be similar to when we were solving with the square root property. What I mean by that is we're going to isolate that absolute value. Okay, isolate meaning we're going to move everything else to the other side. Once we isolate that absolute value, we're going to make one positive and one negative. Same kind of idea that we did when we had our square root property. When we took the square root, we gave one a plus and one a minus, and then we continued to solve. So it's going to be very similar, but it will look a little bit different. So let's look at an example. So let's say we have the absolute value of x plus 3 and then minus 2 equals 18, right? So first thing that I want to do is I want to isolate this absolute value. So I want to isolate that x plus 3. So to do that, I need to move that 2. I'm going to add the 2 to the other side. So I'm going to have absolute value of x plus 3 equals 20. Now that I've done that, one thing I need to check, which I have what I have right up here, number 2, we want to make sure that this is even possible to continue to go forward. So once I have my absolute value bars isolated, I want to make sure that it's equal to a positive number. If it's equal to a positive number, then I'm going to move forward. Okay, so since this one's equal to positive 20, I'm going to move forward here. So what I mean by that is I'm going to take this x plus 3, and I'm going to set it equal to a positive 20. And I'm going to take that x plus 3, and I'm going to set it equal to a negative 20. Now I'm just going to solve this equation. I'm going to subtract a 3, which would give me x equals 17. I'm going to subtract a 3, which gives me x equals negative 23. Okay? Pretty simple once we get the idea of what's going on. All right? Let's look at another example. Okay, so we've got 2 times x plus 1, then minus 12 equals 8. Now, most people, if they're going to make a mistake, they make it right here, and what they do is they start distributing that too. No, that's not what we want to do. Remember, the first step is I need to isolate what's inside of that absolute value bar. So the first thing that I need to do is add that 12. Then I'm going to now divide by that 2. I cannot start distributing into an absolute value bar. It does not work like that. Okay. At this point, I'm going to look at that number. I'm going to check to make sure that it's positive. It is positive, so I'm going to keep going. All right, so that means I'm going to take my x plus 1 and set it equal to a positive 10. I'm going to take my x plus 1 and set it equal to a negative 10. And I'm going to finish solving. Subtract my 1 gives me x equals 9. Subtract my 1 gives me x equals negative 11. Okay, so I've got my 2 answers. Absolute value is similar to quadratic in the sense that I should have 2 answers when I'm finished. Okay, so that would be how we would solve an absolute value. Now remember, if I get something where it's negative, all I have to do is stop and say no solution. So if I had something where I've isolated it, let's say for example up here we had something where it was like x plus 1 equals negative 9. So this would not be possible because it's negative. I would say no solution. Okay, so I would stop. I I wouldn't separate and say x plus 1 equals positive 9, x plus 1 equals negative. No, I stop. Absolute value represents a distance. It doesn't make sense to say I ran a negative 9 miles, right? So when I am set equal to the absolute value bars, it has to be positive, okay? That's how I'm going to solve an absolute value equation.